This video is brought to you by mybookie.ag. What's up, everybody? Here's my prediction for Jake Paul versus Tyron Woodley happening this Saturday. It's a YouTuber fight, I guess, or celebrity fight that I'm somewhat more interested in. We know now that Jake Paul can hit very hard. He knocked out Ben Askren with one punch like that, and guys like Robbie Lawler could not take him out with that same kind of impact, you know? We all know Tyron Woodley has dynamite in his hands. There's a possibility that whoever lands that big shot on their opponent here can end the night pretty early, and yes, Jake Paul could hurt Tyron Woodley for the fact that Woodley has taken a lot of damage throughout his combat career. And the other enticing thing is, so not only the finishing potential about this fight is somewhat intriguing, but it's a fight that might actually be somewhat competitive. Jake Paul's progression as a boxer has exceeded my expectations. I did not think he would be as good as he is. He's not a high-end boxer, but some of his skills and fundamentals are not bad at all, and he could definitely compete with some of the wrestlers who learned boxing through mixed martial arts, such as a Tyron Woodley. You combine that with the fact that Tyron Woodley has slowed down in his career, he's older, he's not in his prime, and that much is very clear. A prime Tyron Woodley, in my opinion, would destroy Jake Paul. But this version of Tyron Woodley was taking a lot of damage, who's been through surgery specifically on his right shoulder, which is where he comes out with his biggest punches. He's older, a lot of miles, and other things going on in his life outside of fighting, so his focus is not solely on combat anymore. This version of Tyron Woodley has regressed to a level that I think would give Jake Paul somewhat of a competitive fight. If not, it allows Jake Paul to beat him. Jake is much taller, he has a reach advantage, he's younger, he's fresher when it comes to the chin, and the word around the gyms are that Jake Paul is training even harder than Tyron Woodley is. I believe Michael Bisping even came out and said so. And that might be due to the age of Woodley. He can't train as hard as he used to. His body probably can't handle all that. Whereas a 24-year-old Jake Paul can absolutely go through the ringer in the gym day in and day out. Same thing Woodley was able to do 15 years ago. And that's going to give Jake Paul yet another advantage going into the fight. I hope Tyron Woodley not training as hard does not correlate to him underestimating Jake Paul. If he underestimates Jake Paul, he's going to lose this fight. He needs to take this fight as serious as he's taken any other fight in his career to assure that victory for him. Now, technically speaking, Tyron Woodley is not the best boxer. In MMA, he was a very good wrestler who was able to threaten with a lot of takedowns, and that ultimately got his opponent to fall into his right hands naturally. He'll get the opponent to drop their hands with a feint blitz because they think he's going to come in with a takedown, and he's able to land the right overhand or a right uppercut. Most of his punches come off of his right hand. You don't normally see Tyron Woodley throw a lot of jabs or left hooks. It's mostly right hands and mostly power shots. Most likely, he's going to dial that back a bit and try to be a little bit more technical because he doesn't have that takedown threat to set up his boxing here. So he's going to have to use a bit more jabs and get on the inside of the longer fighter, but he's not used to doing that. Tyron Woodley in MMA is not used to getting in on opponents behind a jab or feinting and stuff like that without going into an extreme blitz, faking takedowns, or winging right overhands. It's hard to feint blitz in boxing because of the whole clinch system, right? You can clinch up in boxing and it completely negates all action, whereas in MMA, you clinch up with Tyron Woodley, he takes you to the ground. So a lot of fighters did not want to clinch up with Woodley in MMA. He was the one that actually clinched up with a lot of his opponents, and that ultimately kept them in distance for his hands. If they're not clinching up with Woodley, they're creating space, and with that space, Woodley is extremely fast. He's able to get in on you before you even know it. And that's the biggest thing going for Woodley in this kind of fight. It's not his technical prowess in boxing. I would actually say that Jake Paul might be the better boxer, technically. Tyron Woodley, I believe, is more powerful. The speed, I don't know yet, because the way he fought Vicente Luque in his last fight, he did not look all that fast, right? It looked like his speed has declined from when he was in his early 30s, which tells me that if Jake Paul is faster than Woodley, Woodley's definitely going to have a big problem in this fight because that jab is going to keep him at bay for the majority of the fight. If Jake Paul can stick behind the jab and use that as a post as he moves away, if Tyron Woodley wants to blitz in for that big right hand, Woodley might have a hard time finding that knockout blow of his. And ultimately, if he stays on the ropes in this fight, Woodley is going to get stuck there. A big problem Tyron Woodley had his entire MMA career was the fact that he always moved back. He sat on the cage, and he didn't really want to move forward unless he blitzed at you or threw the big right hand at you. When he attacked big, that was the only time he actually moved forward. That's going to be very hard to work with in boxing, specifically against someone like Jake Paul, who would keep a jab on him, look for the big right straight, and mostly attacks down the center without these big looping punches. Woodley needs to be aggressive in this fight. He needs to bring the fight to Jake Paul, not recklessly, not winging punches all over the place, but stay technical as well as pressuring, because the biggest holes I see out of Jake Paul are generally the kind of holes you see in amateur boxers or younger boxers getting into the sport. Their defense does not match up with their offense. And when I see someone like Ben Askren pressure Jake Paul, when I see even that basketball player pressure Jake Paul in that boxing match, there's a lot of things he does wrong. He crosses his feet many times. He kind of almost panics on the defense at times and just wings out the big right overhand instead of being as calm as he is with his offense. His shot selection becomes a lot more obvious, and that's going to allow Tyron Woodley to slip on the punch or block it and go in for the uppercut, because Jake Paul all the time likes to duck his head as he's getting pressured. He takes his eyes off his opponent, puts him straight to the ground, and wings a big punch. That's the best look Tyron Woodley can get out of Jake Paul, and the only way he can get that look is if he pressures. Pressure off the jab, pressure off with feints, bringing that technical offense to Jake Paul, as well as threaten with the power but not throwing it all the time, is going to cause a bit of a panic, and that's how Tyron Woodley can win this fight. But ultimately, my prediction for this is, it's hard for me to go that route when I never really see that out of Woodley. It's very close, but I'm going to side with Jake Paul here. I think because of the usual tendencies I saw out of Tyron Woodley, even when he was trying to be offensive and aggressive against Vicente Luque, he eventually saw his back to the cage again. If he sits on the cage, I think he's probably going to lose this. That long jab is going to keep him there. The body shots are going to keep him there. It's going to take the wind out of the sails, and Jake Paul can end the fight with one big shot. There's too many obstacles and danger for Tyron Woodley, I believe, to triumph through. If he becomes pressuring, I actually do favor him to win the fight. If Tyron Woodley is pressuring, he has a big chance of winning this fight. If he's sitting on the ropes, he has a big chance of losing this fight. And which of those do you normally see Tyron Woodley resort to? So I'm going to go Jake Paul here. Keep the jab on him. Right hands to the body. Right hands to the head. Maybe some left hooks here and there just to mix up his left hand. And I see him eventually TKOing Tyron Woodley probably in the 3rd round or the 4th. But man, I'm really rooting for Tyron Woodley here. According to the betting odds, Jake Paul is almost a 2-1 favorite. I do think it's a bit too much. I do not agree it's that far apart. Tyron Woodley definitely has a big chance of winning here. And the best place to go to capitalize on those betting odds is mybookie.ag. They have the best lines in the business, and they are moving rapidly, man. I'm already seeing that Jake Paul is becoming less of a favorite, and that's what I expect here. I don't think Jake Paul should be a 2-1 favorite. Even minus 185 is a bit too much. This is by far the most dangerous opponent he's ever come across. And honestly, I do kind of like the odds for Tyron Woodley if you're taking that route. If you're riding for Woodley in this one, you probably like to see him be a bigger underdog to maximize your earnings on this. And especially if you can go and predict the method here, because they got Jake Paul as a minus 165 to win by KO, TKO, or DQ. They got plus 175 for Woodley to win by the same kind of methods. But if you believe Woodley is durable enough or defensive enough that he has shown throughout most of his MMA career, maybe Jake Paul could take this to a decision, or maybe Woodley could take it to a decision for a big chunk off of those odds right there. Plus 1,800, plus 1,200. There's many ways you can go and bet on this fight. But make sure when you sign up with mybookie.ag, you use the deposit bonus. They will double your first deposit. So if you put up $100, you get another $100 in free money to play with. All you have to do is use the promo code WEASEL, that's WEASLE, to take advantage of MyBookie sign-up offer. Visit mybookie.ag today, where you win big. And it's exactly what I've been saying, man. Tyron Woodley, I think, is a little bit too much of an underdog. I don't think I'm too confident to put anything on Jake Paul, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit on Tyron Woodley for how much bigger of an underdog he is. And he's definitely not out of the run in this fight. I don't think he's going to win, but he definitely has a great chance by moving forward and pressuring throughout the fight. The odds on the decision is not bad at all. Woodley has been known to be extremely defensive to the point where even the sharpest strikers in the world could not hit him clean. But if he goes that route, he's probably going to lose the fight. Unless, Jake Paul gets tired and things happen there. Man, there's a lot of things that can happen here. So I hope you guys do the predictions, and if you did, make sure to thumbs up and drop a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.